This session is recorded to demonstrate the usage of the script object and the function and how do we call the function passing arguments within the scripting. So that is the main agenda. So now we have seen how do we get the chart and table using this image button. Now moving on to the next, we need to see how to you when which are the cases when you utilize the scripting object. So we take an example wherein we have a drop down which will show you the list of measures of the data source, and then it has been named as selected measures. So let's go to the code and the settings. So now this is the same setup which I have used in the previous video, so I will not repeat it. The new part which has been added is there is a drop down which was added from here. So I have added a drop down, this one, and the name of the drop down is drop down measures. This is the name. So this also whatever names you have for every widget, it is important if you have to use it in the scripting. So we need to know, we need to rename it and make sure you use the same reference in the script. And then you added, then there was a text widget added to add the text against the drop down. So the basic, if we talk logically, the basic requirement would be that I restrict the measures of the data source into this drop down, and I also restrict it onto a default value because we can't leave it to blank. So if I run this, so it has been refreshed. So it has been restricted to a particular value, and if I drop down, I see all the measures, the five measures which are in the best run juice SAP model. So now how do we do that? So let's go into the outline. Here we see this is the drop down widget. This is the text widget in which you have added the text against to label the drop down. And the rest of them is same as what we had discussed before. So I will not go through it again. We will just talk about this. So first, so I will start with the code. If you go into the edit, so first is it we will have to initialize the drop down. So we go into the initialization because when you land onto the report, you already see values, right? So that means we have to use an initial, we have to write the scripting in the initialization to initialize these values. So on page one, on initialization, this this is the script. So we define a variable measures, and you get all the measures of the data source, which are with the data source which is restricted to the table, which is the best use run. And then you have a variable which is initialized to blank. So we take the length and then we do a for loop. And the for loop, why? Because it is an array, because it is more than one measure which we have in the data source. So you need to loop and then attach one by one each of them into the drop down measures widget. So drop down measures is the name. So if you see, we are adding it into the adding the measures one by one we with the loop until we reach to the maximum count of the measure, that is 5, and then we add the items or the measures as an array with ID and descriptions into the drop down measures, okay, widget. And then you need to restrict it to one particular value. So it is restricting the first value, which is the gross margin, which we saw here in this section, where it is restricting the first value as a set selected key. That means it will be defaulted as you are doing it in initialization section. It set selected key means the default value which you will get when you run the report as a default value. So console.log is again the same to just to see what is the value being restricted on for the selected key, and same is for the measure, what measures in every loop are you attaching. If you want to see that, For debugging, you have this used here inside the for loop. So you can see each of the values which has been attached to the drop-down measures. So this is the initialization. Now, where are we using the script object? So what you can what why script object is similar to the function module in the ABAP. So we have a function group and then you have a function module, and in the function module you will have an argument or the very import and export, right? So here there is it is called as argument. So you pass this as a variable into this function to perform some action. Okay, so now how do we call it? So we call it with this syntax. This is the script object dot the function name and the argument. So now here we are passing this value, the first default value into this script object or into this function. So what is the logic in this function? So if you go to the edit script, so here this function is called two places. One is in the initialization where it is actually setting the first value and storing it into this, passing it into this function. And the second place where it is in the into the drop down measures. So here instead of writing, so if there are multiple, so the advantage of this is if you are having multiple widgets in which you need to have the same similar logic, then it is easy to use or call this the code in using this method. So that is where you generally use the script object functionality. So here we call the script object and the function uh, name, and then you are passing this value as a selected key into the drop down measure. So this you are getting the selected key here. And as you are passing this value, so whatever is selected, you are getting that key and you are passing it into this function. This function is you are calling this function and passing that argument into the set measure filter. This will get called. So basically you define the function here and you call it at two places. One is in the initialization to initialize the value with the default key, which is gross margin, and then in the drop down measure and on select when it is selected here on select the drop down measure, when you select any value, again this script is getting called. So what it is doing, it will again clean up the in the table. It will clean up the, because we need to now handle table and chart both, because if you remember we have done overlay of the chart, right? So we need to restrict, the filter has to be restricted to both table and the chart. So now are removing the dimension filter account best run J sold. The reason we are instead of measure we are saying remove dimension filter because it's a planning model and all the measures are inside the account dimension. So that's why we clear it all the measures with this statement, and then we set the dimension filter of this dimension which is of the measure to the selected ID. Selected ID, if you remember, is the argument where we are passing from the drop-down measure code the get selected key. So that key which has been selected on the onSelect of drop-down measure is being passed into the selected ID of the set measure filter function, and that has been passed to the set dimension filter. So the table one now is getting restricted on the selected value of the drop-down list. Now the second so table is sorted. Now what we have left with is the chart. We need to now restrict the chart for the measure. So for the chart, what we do, we will get the, so it again for the chart, it was difficult to restrict the particular measure because the value which we are getting right in the selected ID, that has to be restricted here. So the chart already was having some measure. So uh, we have to clear the measures which are there, and then we add restrict it as per the value which we have. So what we do, we take all the values, we read all the measures which are in the chart. So if it is one, two, or whatever, how many we have, but it can be more than one also. So that's why we define it as we are taking it as an array, and then we loop through it and we remove one each of them as it is array. We have to loop. Wherever there is a more than one value, we need a for loop. So we do it in a for loop. We remove the measure, we clear up, and then we again attach or add the measure in the value access with the selected ID, which has selected ID again is the variable where we have captured the get selected key from the drop down measures on from when there was an on click activity which has happened. So after these are the places where we have the code, and after it's done, we see this gross margin. So this is the default value or zero, which was been restricted in the initialization code. That's why you see gross margin here. Even the table is restricted to gross margin. If you go to the chart, even the chart is restricted to gross margin. Okay. And now if I select discount, the discount gets restricted onto the table. If you go to the chart, for the chart also the discount is restricted. Let's try one more. Original sales price. If you see the original sales price is restricted and it has been deleted, it has deleted the discount. Same is for table. You see only original sales price. The previous value was deleted. That logic of cleaning or refreshing and setting onto the selected value is in the drop down measure on select code. So that code is being called through the script object.